And so, Mr. Mueller, you have seen a letter where 1,000 former Republican and Democratic federal prosecutors have read your report and said anyone but the president who committed those acts would be charged with obstruction of justice. Do you agree with those former colleagues, 1,000 prosecutors who came to that conclusion?
Those prosecutors.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over here. Thanks. Mr. Mueller, you guys, your team wrote in the report, quote, this is the top of page 2, volume 1, also on page 173, by the way. You said that you'd come to the conclusion that, quote, the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities, close quote. That's an accurate statement, right?
That's accurate.
And I'm curious, when did you personally come to that conclusion?
Can you remind me which paragraph you're referring to?
Top of page 2.
On 2?
Volume 1.
Okay. And exactly which paragraph are you looking at on 2?
The investigation did not establish.
Of course. I see it. Yes.
See it?
What was your question?
My question now is, when did you personally reach that conclusion?
Well, we were ongoing for 2 years.
Right, you were ongoing, you wrote it at some point during that 2-year period, but at some point you had to come to a conclusion that that I don't think there's not a conspiracy going on here. There was no conspiracy between this president. I'm not talking about the rest of the president's team. I'm talking about this president and the Russians.
As you understand, developing a criminal case, you get pieces of information, witnesses, and the like, as you make your case.
Right.
And when you make a decision on a particular case depends on a number of factors.
Right, I understand.
So I cannot say specifically that we reached a decision on a particular defendant at a particular point in time.
But it was some time well before you wrote the report, fair enough? I mean, you wrote the report dealing with a whole myriad of issues. Certainly at some time prior to that report is when you reached the decision that, okay, with regard to the president himself, I don't find anything here. Fair enough?
Well, I'm not certain I do agree with that.
So you waited until the last minute when you were actually writing the report and say, oh, okay. Well,
no, but there are various aspects of the development of
Sure, and that's my point. There are various aspects that happen, but somewhere along the pike, you will come to a conclusion. There's no there for this defendant. Isn't that right? So apparently,
I can't speak.
You can't say when. Fair enough. So you know, I'm not. No, I'm asking the sworn witness. Mr. Mueller, evidence suggests that on May 10th, 2017, at approximately 7:45 a.m., 6 days before the DAG Deputy Attorney General appointed you special counsel, Mr. Rosenstein called you and mentioned the appointment of a special counsel. Not necessarily that you'd be appointed, but that you had a discussion of that. Is that true? May 10th, 2017.
I don't have any. I don't have any knowledge of that occurring.
You don't have any knowledge, or you don't recall?
I don't have any knowledge.
Evidence also suggests.
I mean, given that what I saw you do, are you questioning that?
Well, I just find it intriguing. Let me just tell you that there's evidence that suggests that that phone call took place and that that's what was said. So let's move to the next question. Evidence suggests that also on May 12, 2017, 5 days before the DAG appointed you special counsel, you met with Mr. Rosenstein in person. Did you discuss the appointment of special counsel then? Not necessarily that you, but that there would be a special counsel.
I've gone into waters that don't allow me to give you an answer to that particular question. It relates to the internal discussions he would have in terms of indicting an individual.
It has nothing to do with indictment. It has to do with special counsel and whether you discussed that with Mr. Rosenstein. Evidence also suggests on May 13th, 4 days before you were appointed special counsel, you met with former Attorney General Sessions and Rosenstein, and you spoke about special counsel. Do you remember that?
Not offhand, no.
Okay. And on May 16th, the day before you were appointed special counsel, you met with the president and Rod Rosenstein. Do you remember having that meeting?
Yes.
And discussion of the position of FBI director took place. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And did you discuss at any time in that meeting Mr. Comey's termination?
No.
Did you discuss at any time in that meeting the potential appointment of a special counsel? Not necessarily you, but just in general terms.
I can't get into discussions on that.
How many times did you speak to Mr. Rosenstein before May 17th, which is the day you got appointed, regarding the appointment of special counsel. How many times prior to that did you
I
discuss?
can't tell you how many times.